Good morning and welcome to day 2 of Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur here in Malaysia. I'm your host Rich Hagan. We have 3 screaming matches to get the day underway. On table 1 we have the undefeated Martin Juza of the Czech Republic up against the undefeated Paul Cheon of the United States. Further on, 2 Hall of Famers did battle, John Finkel, Nico Herzog. And on table 3, well, that was Guillaume Waffa-Tapa of France up against Akihiro Asahara of Japan. Now those were really high-powered matches, and that's what happens on day 2 of a Pro Tour. I'm here with Bill Stark, and let's get underway. Let's have a little chat here. First of all, we've got Paul Cheon, Martin Juza of the Czech Republic. Now, you know a bit about Martin. You had a chat with him. Tell us about him.
Well, Rich, it's always easy to take a look at that match and immediately focus on Paul Cheon, the former U.S. national champion. He also started the day yesterday undefeated, but that would be doing a disservice to Martin Juza. He's from the Czech Republic, and to the untrained ear, that might not mean much. But the reality is the Czech Republic has already produced a world champion in the form of Jakub Slimmer, and it's also got a consistent gravy train over the past couple years in Arno Zidek. Now, a few years ago, the Czech Republic actually hosted a limited Pro Tour in Pro Tour Prague in 2006. It was the first Pro Tour John Finkel hit after coming back from his retirement after the Team Pro Tour, so it was his first individual event. And the overall feeling after that Pro Tour, I feel, was that the Czech community sort of really came together after it. I had a chance to travel in the country afterwards.
All right.
Got to see a local event, and players really love to draft. They love the game. So I think we're kind of starting to see in Martin Juza the after effect of what having a Pro Tour in a country where Magic wasn't necessarily so popular can result in. And it's good to see him doing well today.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have a lot of credit to Arno Zidek about that. A real ambassador for the game, a guy who plays really hard, but also a great guy, goes to all the European GPs, and one of those guys from a country, like you say, where there aren't a lot of pros, and so he was a figurehead for a long time, and now he's got some competition.
Yep.
He's got some traveling companions.
Yep.
And again, that's what Magic's all about. It's something you notice with the Swiss.
Yep.
As well. Nico Boni was up there, a Grand Prix winner. All of a sudden they're the team world champions. You've got a whole bunch of people, Rafael Gennari, Manuel Bucher, and so on. Now in that match, Juza against Cheon, it was a screamer. Paul Cheon finally comes out the winner. He therefore is our only undefeated player at 8-0. So this really is his time to make top 8. We talked on the show last night about that. The second match saw Nico Herzog up against John Finkel. 2 Hall of Famers, exactly what you want when you invent the Hall of Fame. You want to see those guys clashing.
Absolutely.
And John Finkel, a man who won a Pro Tour a decade ago. That was his first win, Pro Tour New York. 2000 world champion. Now he actually beat Nico Herzog, continues to be in the feature match area, pretty much where he belongs. He set up house here.
Absolutely.
And that's where he belongs. Third match, Guillaume Waffa-Tapa against Akihiro Asahara. Guillaume Waffa-Tapa, what's he doing in the feature match area? It's a limited Pro Tour. Surely he should be here in maybe Hollywood or Berlin when we're talking extended and standard. But this time, he's here with a limited deck. He has moved to 7-1. He beat Akihiro Asahara on the last turn of extra turns, which was a pretty outstanding performance. So he is well in the hunt. Now, a couple of other guys that I know, Bill, that you've been looking at. First up, a guy called Chang Chua. Now, he's from Singapore. Tell us a bit about him.
Well, Chang is sort of one of the nice local flavor stories. So he's not strictly from Malaysia, but this area of Asia. And he's a player who those at home might not recognize immediately, but he does have 3 Grand Prix top 8s, so he's not a no-name. And one of the interesting stories about him this weekend that I found out in just speaking with some of the pros, apparently Antonina De Rosa stayed with him this week in Singapore prior to the event to practice before coming down here on the bus trip that was arranged with the Singapore players. Now, when Antonina De Rosa originally told me that, I thought, I'm probably getting a Gerard Fabiano line here.
Okay.
But I did some background checking with Chang, and it turns out they met at a Grand Prix a number of years ago, hit it off for whatever reason, and now X years later, Antonino wound up being able to take advantage of that friendship from the Pro Tour, spent the week together, and now they're here at the PT with his buddy Chang. He's been watching him all weekend, constantly checking on how he's doing, and he's doing really good. So that's always exciting to see. It was a really good story.
And that is the kind of story that you like to see on the Pro Tour. People from across continents, you think maybe of Kenji Samura and Rich Hone. That's an unlikely marriage on the face of it. You look at someone like yourself and the Belgians, you've suddenly got really close to them. And I think it's partly the explosion of the internet, but it's also just the fact that with the Players Club, that for 3-4 years running, you've been together. You do see each other 5-6 times a year. And it's just great, and that's how friendships build. It's a great thing. It's not just about the winning.
Yep.
It really is about not even the taking part, just being there together and sharing the great stories. Now, another guy that I didn't know anything about, I've got to be honest, a guy called Mark Conkle from the United States. You're from that neck of the woods. Give us a little insight to him.
Well, Rich, you weren't the only guy who didn't know much about Mark Conkle, and after yesterday when we saw him do really well, I went around to all the major American pros and said, guys, do you know who this is? I've never heard of him. It turns out that no one else had either. I went to each different group. They said he's not from the Southwest, he's not from the Northeast. Eventually, I did some more research, and it turns out Mark won a PTQ actually in Louisville, Kentucky, but it wasn't just any PTQ. It turns out he had to get through former U.S. national champion Craig Krimples in the finals. So Mark Conkle, whether or not people know him before this weekend, they should know him after this weekend if he can keep off the pressure and maintain today. And hopefully we'll see big things from him.
All right. Well, we're almost done. When we come back, we're going to talk a bit about the European Challenge for the Player of the Year. But little trivia question for you, Bill. I know you're going to know this.
Okay.
Which nation has the most members of the Hall of Fame?
Rich, that's an easy one. It's the U.S.
Yeah, of course it's the U.S. So for you at home, do they have a majority of players in the Hall of Fame? There's 15 altogether. But is the US in a majority there? We'll tell you when we come back on the second show in Tournament Centre. But for now, I'm your host, Rich Hagan, for Bill Stark, saying bye.